Hi, everyone. Thanks so much. It's so good to see everyone online, and it was great to see folks in person yesterday. All of that, I have to say, you've all very much impressed me with the type of research that you're doing. And I got a couple of the research projects really piqued my imagination. My background's in sustainability, and I started and ran a sustainability analytics firm as a startup, which was then acquired. So anytime I hear about sustainability or some of the things that we talked about in this conference, I'm just so honored to be in your presence. I'm honored to offer up this concept and philosophy of sort of rethinking what AI is, rethinking how we frame AI. It's very participatory, so I would really appreciate if when I put in links into the chat, if you can click on those links, complete the questionnaires as I go through it. My goal with this presentation is to kind of give you a chance to see where you stand with certain mindsets around AI, as well as how you feel like you are getting things done or not getting things done when it comes to it. So I am going to take myself back up to the top of my slides here and share my slides with you. It looks like they're being shared at the moment. So let me know if anyone can't see them. Uh, so thank you so much. So today, really, our goal is to think about what is acumen when it comes to business and how do we actually measure it in professional environments, not just the classroom. And so the framework of co-creation isn't really about just co-creating within AI. It's more about how do I shift my mindset around thinking about AI. And with that in mind, I want us to start out right away with a quick survey. So I'm going to grab this URL that I have available for me to see right now. I'm just going to copy this Google form and put it into the chat for you. Please take a moment and spend a second or two here to fill this survey out. And I'm just double checking that I'm sending it to everyone here. Looks like it. Uh, Let me know if everyone can see that or if it's going to an individual. It looks like it might be going to an individual. Wait, here we go. All right, there we go. Now it's going out to everyone. So click on that link for me, and I am excited to do this presentation and workshop in particular. I've presented this several times at organizations and corporations. Lots of retail companies are trying to understand what AI is doing for them and not doing for them and how they can do it. So let me start with the simplest version of the problem, which is AI is already in the room, it's already in the classroom, it's already in the workplace, right? People already have it on tabs, on phones, on browsers, on workflows. So the real question now is not whether we use it. That train's already been posted on LinkedIn, right? Like it's all over the place. The question is whether people will use AI with judgment. And what is judgment, right? Like, how do we measure judgment? The session is a difference between AI assisted completion versus AI supervised judgment. And that difference is where learning lives. That difference is also where our professional credibility and lives live because we want it to be in that kind of environment. Um, I also want you to, as you complete this survey, uh, I want you to think about here's why this matters. Since it's built around co-creations, AI, it's not just a technique. It reflects sort of this different stance about what learning and cognition is, and more importantly, change, because change is coming and AI is motivating change. So what do we do to actually manage that motivation? Um, they are some foundational beliefs. They're also based around theories, which we'll go over. So we'll talk about what those theories are and why I chose certain theories as part of the questions that I formulated. Of course, there are no right answers, as you guys all know, as researchers. It's more a diagnostic of your beliefs. And I do want to kind of get a handle here and see how many responses I've gotten. I've gotten so far a couple. There's 23 of us in the class, so or in this workshop. So if we can, I'd love to get up to 10. for folks to answer. There's only a few questions in each little section that we're doing. And there will be several sections, but I'm just trying to get a handle on what this looks like for everybody so I can, three of them have come in now. So with that in mind, let's consider for a second as you guys can continue answering these questions. Notice that you have certain thinking when you read a question, especially when you're framing these questions in the context of AI. It takes a few minutes, maybe even for you to process it, right? There are four questions here. It's not an extensive list of questions. All right, I'm going to shoot for five. I got three in right now. Anyone else interested in submitting their responses? Raise your hand if you're currently completing the survey. If you're not currently completing the survey, or if you've already completed it, no worries. But if you are currently completing it, raise your hand in Zoom. It could just be that we all have our computers on at our desk and we've all gone to lunch. Um, so, all right. So I've gotten three responses. Let's just see what they looked like since this is going to become less of a workshop and more of a conceptual overview of what the survey questions are. Uh, with, let me just stop sharing here for a second and share with you the responses in the Google form. All right. So here we are with the set of questions. We got three responses. When AI produces a well-written and coherent answer, it is reasonable to treat the answer as reliable without additional verification. So we as scholars, one person said, when it's well-written and coherent, I they said two, which I think is pretty honest. I've had lots of students say four or five. I've had professionals that are barely beginning to use AI use four and five. So it does have to do with the coherence of the answer and the fact that it seems to harken back to some of the expertise that you might have there. Um, and I'm seeing four pop up here, so thank you for that answer there. The other thing I would put here is the most valuable learning happens when a person is supported just beyond what they can do independently, not when the answer is simply provided for them. So this goes back to pedagogy, right? And this goes back to how we design materials and interactions with AI. So if we're going to design something that teaches students how to utilize AI or teaches staff how to utilize AI, that means the support is just beyond what they can do independently. Um, and we saw this in some of the examples that popped up during the panel discussion yesterday, and this is making itself more valid when it comes to this group that we're working with today too. Being wrong or discovering that a trusted source was wrong is one of the most powerful moments of genuine learning. So interesting that we view wrongness, right, and not correctness as a powerful moment of genuine learning. Probably because we had to rewire what we were thinking about things. And that's why when a lot of people, when they're teaching AI these days, they teach it where they show how AI is giving them wrong answers, even though they sound right. Right. So that kind of goes to that pedagogical goal here. People learn more deeply when they have real agency over how they engage with the task, not just whether they complete it. Um, so what does agency really mean here? I think that's a question that you have to really noodle over and make sure that when we are designing as educators or as people who are training staff and teams, what does agency look like when it comes to AI? And how do we enable agency with AI? Because I don't think that's an easy question necessarily. And that we should use AI to help clarify what agency actually looks like for students through the design of the assignments that we're going after or through the professional development environments that we're trying to build for our teams. And I'm putting it in both of those contexts because faculty and staff operate within this use of AI these days, and it's important to note that. So as we've seen here, these four questions are giving us some trends initially. Let me stop sharing and start sharing my slides again. I like to do this because it gives us a little bit of real engagement as far as where we are and what we're doing. So let's talk about some of the things related to these questions that we have before us. This idea of fluency bias comes from epistemology theories, and fluency bias is built on there's a handbook that I want to offer you guys at the end of this workshop that actually walks you through this process. You'll have access to these slides. You'll have access to um, the other materials that I have. You'll have access to the surveys, so you'll be able to duplicate those surveys if you'd like, and utilize some of these things in your own environment. Especially if you're in a position of a department leadership, or if you're coordinating a set of courses and you're trying to get faculty, trying to get a handle on how faculty are viewing these things. I like these questions because they're not directly about AI. And so we get to learn a little bit more about the philosophy and philosophical thinking behind what our staff is doing here, which is a useful tool. We'll also note that we're talking about sort of proximal development, and again, another educational concept that's built into this question, number two. Number three is this idea of what is transformative learning and how's transformative learning actually happening? The wrongness of something and learning about the wrongness of something and its possible transformative learning scenario. And then we have self-determination theory, where we get to decide certain things on our own, which is the idea of agency. And you'll notice as we went through this, we talked about a couple of things, and I want to pose this out to those of you guys who looked at the questions, even if you didn't answer them, or if you reviewed the questions and thought about it. Most of the participants align around this idea that co-creation, based on what you said, is pretty predominant. But there's more questions, so we'll see if you drift in a different direction. And then we have to think about what were the assumptions about AI that could create some type of friction whenever you're thinking about bringing these things forward. And believe it or not, if you put some of these questions into your own design of workshops or your own design of materials that you create for your teams about spreading AI around your organization and getting your philosophical shift in your organization to happen, uh, you can uncover a lot of those assumptions and have dialogue around them. So here's a question for you. What one word represents your relationship with AI right now? So in the chat, here inside of the platform on Zoom, let me know what is the one word that you are thinking about when it comes to using your AI and your relationship with AI. What's the one word? Collaborative. Good. What else? Partner. Uh, Anyone else? Thank you, dear colleagues, for your direct engagement, stepping up, being present. We all taught on Zoom. We recognize what's going on with our team, our staff, or should I say our colleagues right now. Efficiency, right? We're all multitasking. So efficiency, absolutely. All right. I love it. Fazer, thank you so much for that. Anything else? Any other words? All right. All right. So there are all kinds of things that we will like to ask ourselves when we think about AI. And one of those old questions is, should I use or should people, right? Let's put it in the people context because we're talking about organizational things and team connections. Should people use AI or not? Um, and there's no need to worry about that, right? Like people are using AI, and people who aren't using AI are starting to feel the pressure of not using AI. It's like the people who don't have smartphones. Remember when everyone started getting smartphones and then people were feeling the pressure of not having a smartphone? So we're getting that way with AI now. And so people are hearing about it so much that they're feeling some pressure. Now, of course, there are cultures and organizations that are absolutely against AI for various reasons. Um, and how do we design learnings so people must interrogate, revise, and justify what AI produces? And I've had some interesting conversations with colleagues around this because we've co-created things together, whether it's slide decks or whether it's other types of materials, and we go back and forth about how much of what we do we want to reveal has been made by AI, right? Because if it's made by AI, but there's no evidence that we've done some type of interrogation of what we've gotten or an opportunity to show revision or some type of justification methodology around it, then we don't really know what we're getting here. And I think that's a really important question that we have to consider as we think about these pieces. The other thing I would say is our goal really in our organizations and with our teams should not be to stop AI from appearing, but to understand the goal is to make human judgment more visible. And I'm going to noodle with you on human judgment a little bit and AI, because just like in my classroom, if I have a moment or two during my presentation here, I will step into AI and show you a couple of things about what I feel like what judgment looks like in this context. So when we're thinking about co-creation and the philosophical shift of co-creation, the idea would be that you have some type of generate component, right? That you look at this idea of generate and then question and then improve and then justify. Now, this is different than verify, right? So verify is often just looking for, is it true or not? Justify is, what's the context for why you're using AI? And what's the rationale that you have defined at the very beginning of your use of AI to give that justification to your audience so that they can see your own transparency? And then you also want to think about the idea of human as, is it an epistemic, right? Is it epistemic agency? And that would mean these three words: true, sufficient, and appropriate. And I give you this context, and I would love for you guys, and I know we're all using AI for different things at different points, but I'd love for you to take some of these concepts around what co-creation is and then put them into your current AI usage so that you're taking this context of generate, question, improve, and justify, human as an agent, a person with agency, right? And this idea that our existence, our ability to prove our existence and prove our worth to ourselves epistemologically is where we're at with this. And the output then improved by human intervention. Now, what does that red line mark look like? In other words, how do I redline what came out of any of these things? And you can have AI help you redline, right? If you're using ChatGPT, which has a lot less limits than something like Claude, right? A lot of people run into limits almost every day if they're using Claude extensively, right? You do part of one project or complete one project maybe with Claude, but then you're done for the day unless you're paying for like the enterprise version. And so when you think about your outputs and your engagement and your dialogue and your ongoing engagement with it, it could be that the Gemini or or ChatGPT is a better tool for you to learn on so that when you go into Claude, you know how to use it efficiently and effectively to get co-creation done quickly. I do not believe in prompt engineering. It was a very interesting concept that someone came up with because, of course, they ask AI to help formulate structures and formulas and templates so that they could get the most from X, Y, or Z, right? So AI helped designate and design this concept of prompt engineering. Um, but when we build prompts and we're dialoguing and conversing and co-creating with AI, we're creating a stronger product. A very good prompt gives you gives AI lots of room for error. Whereas if each piece and each part of what you're doing is worked on and completed, then you know you have direct engagement at each step. And there's different worlds of thinking around this, right? That some people will be like, no, I believe in the like 500 word prompt that's like super detailed and give every single little piece of it. At that point, I'm like, why aren't you just writing your work and then just copy editing it inside of Grammarly, right? Like what's your goal with a 500 word prompt? And for people who are of that mindset, they may say, well, that's a good point. I don't use AI very much other than to give me something that I can go back in and do tons of work on. Um, the AI assisted completion, that means you have a document that you already created, you drop it into AI and you say, all right, copy edit this. So because we all know copy editing is not like rewriting. It's really just looking for grammatical errors and those kinds of things. A workaround or a shortcut. Co-creation is harder when working alone. It requires more judgment, not less. What that means is I'll pull stuff out of my class that I build and I'll give it to my students and I'll say, using AI, give me some improvements to this, right? Because I want them to see how, let's say, a worksheet that I'm building for another class, I'll have one marketing class update a worksheet for another marketing class, or I'll have them look at the concept of a set of chapters ahead of time, and then they'll do analysis around that. And then passively receiving tutoring is a great tool if you need tutoring on a subject. So I'm not saying anything wrong, but that's just not co-creation. So here's the next engagement, and I'd love for even more people to participate in this next one. This next one is really built for you to get another level of understanding. All of my questions are built around theory, so they're not just like abstractly built. They're built around theory. So whenever you're participating, it helps to sort of look at the theories and understand people's perspectives as it relates to the theories. So please take a moment and complete this if you wouldn't mind. Let's see. All right. I'll see where we are with this engagement. It'll probably take you a minute or two to get through it. It's just another 4 questions. And for those guys, those folks who are not directly engaging in the survey, I did want to put the questions up for you so you can start noodling over those questions, noodling over the theories behind those questions. Um, since the workshop is a little different, it's called a pedagogical pivot, right? When engagement is low, so you pedagogically pivot to a different style of teaching. I got a couple. Hoping to get the same number of 4 or 5 that I got in the last one. That would be ideal. Don't noodle over these things too much. Some of it might be a question of comprehension, but try not to figure out why the question is. Just answer it for this time, for this experience, since you can see the questions and the theories already up on the screen. Here, let me make sure I'm sharing. I'll share my screen. There we go. So there's your survey here. All right, we got four responses coming in here. Let's just go over the questions because I do like to offer them up to you, and for you to see kind of where your colleagues are with the thinking behind these questions. So learning that requires you to actively produce something, a critique, a revision, a decision sticks better than learning that asks you to find, to listen, or to read. I think we all know pedagogically that's true. In my professional teaching practice, I regularly examine whether the assumptions behind my approach are still valid, not just whether my methods are working. So, what is working versus valid, right? That's an interesting distinction that we have there. I have a clear and repeatable approach to integrating AI into my teaching and professional work that I use consistently. All right. So this reveals something interesting about the group that we're in. The people who are currently participating are currently using AI in the learning environment, right? So that reveals the participatory engagement of our cohort that we're in right now. And then the biggest barrier keeping me from changing how I use AI in my work is not motivation, it's knowing exactly what to do first. Now that is so fascinating. I love that one. So this reveals the need for additional professional development, right? Like we're seeing that even though people are practicing it a lot, they're still really excited about how they could make it even better, which reveals a curiosity which we should be utilizing as team leaders or organizational leaders or people who are thinking about these things in our classroom. And this could be modified slightly. You know, you could take these questions and modify them slightly and point it toward the student, change it as a student as the audience, because I feel like if you gave this and pivoted a few of these questions and tweaked them slightly, it could be an interesting set of information that you take forward for the whole semester if you deliver this survey early in your class. That's one way you might think about using it. The theories that I had around this was called experiential theory or experiential learning. There's this idea of double loop learning, and then stage of change, and then behavior models. So part of what my questions were dealing with was this idea of a change model or some type of transformational change that can happen over the course of using AI, or whether people are resistant to change in general, or what some of these questions can reveal as part of our engagement with each other here. When we think about the co-creation framework, there's sort of these four moves, and I call them moves because each one sort of takes you to a new place, right? A step, oftentimes we think that we're just doing something to get it done so that we can get to the next step. Whereas a move means that you're going from one place with this creative agent onto another place with this creative agent, onto another place with the creative tool, and then finally to this context of like some type of rebuild that gives us a revelation of our thinking. Now, I'll give you a secret to me figuring out which one of these is most important. I'm a huge believer in the fact that unless I put myself directly into anything that is created these days, direct examples, very specific examples from the workplace that I've been in, very specific examples from the neighborhood that I live in, very specific examples from the conferences that I go to and the experiences and conversations that I've had with people, very specific, you know, the who, what, when, where, like type journalistic specificity is what you need to provide now inside of your production of materials, especially when you're trying to teach to students. The abstraction and the what we call the professional perspective or objectivity now is so easily generated. The sterileness of what we get from AI is so pervasive that it literally shuts people down. So what that means is we have to invigorate with our own examples every single thing that we create, whether it's a quick introduction at the top of a worksheet or whether it's how I want you to use AI in this context. Here's an example from my own personal life, right? I took a trip to X, Y, and Z, and AI was this tool that I used to do this, this, and this. The revelations of our personal engagement with AI are the thing that remind us now that we have tools that create language, assimilations of new ideas, putting ideas together in new ways because language, one of the keys I always tell students is large language models model our thinking because the only way that we get our thinking out into the world is by language. So we're in a very weird place in the world right now where we are being asked to treat AI not as a friend, even though it's using the thing that we make a translation to from our head into the world. So that's why people get really freaked out and they're like, this thing is thinking. And I'm like, no, it's using language and modeling language, which we have always thought of as thought. So that's a really special place to be. So if you put a framework like this into place that keeps in mind, I am co-creating, not that I'm going through a set of steps to validate something, you're going to get to a more human output from your use of AI. All right, one more form just because I really love these questions and I want to be able to walk you through the sort of theoretical background of what I'm offering up to you in this workshop. It's not just it is not for me just an exercise in like giving you information and giving you slides. Like I want to see kind of who's in the room. What are you thinking about these concepts that are constantly being thrown at us when we think about AI? I'll put the questions up on the screen here so that you can see them for these last three. There's only three in this last one, so it's a little bit shorter. If you haven't participated yet, feel free to jump in at any point. Don't feel like just because you haven't participated that you'll somehow not be um, not be able to keep up. The questions sit independently with each other. Sorry, let me take the questions back up. All right, so there's your reflection survey. Seeing responses coming in from folks. Yeah. Something I'm intrigued to do with you guys, and I'll put this into the shared drive at the end of this workshop. I do want to do a conversion of these questions into a student-centered version of these questions, just because I would love to hear if any of you guys decide to use these types of questions and the sort of like discovery of how their brain is working. How ready are they for this idea of co-creation? Do they have some philosophical barriers, or should I say thinking mindset barriers, that could get in their way when it comes to utilizing AI like this? All right, so professional and academic circumstances of not developing AI judgment skills are as significant as the consequences of not developing writing or analytical skills. Right, so look, we are we are basically saying in that first question, hey, AI, we're talking about writing and analysis is like foundational. AI skills and judgment skills are just as important because living in the context of analysis with AI is something that students will absolutely have to do in every place. I feel confident that I could design one activity in a course or workshop or meeting that requires people to critically interrogate an AI output rather than simply accept it. I want to see where you guys are with this one. Yeah. I love it. There's people who are very much in the middle of the road with their responses. I'll share with you the responses that we've gotten so far because I want you guys to see where your colleagues are landing here in this space. And it would be interesting, like, oh, there's a whole cross-cultural, intercultural angle to these questions that we're not even talking about, but that's my cross-cultural, intercultural studies background. That begs another question. So you can see we're thinking about this in a similar way. There's skepticism in the middle, which is normal. And then the last question, the most important thing AI can do in learning or professional development setting is give people something worth arguing with, not something that they can submit or use directly. Um, so this is where we see a skew, and I think you would see this natural skew with students too, because we're not taught to engage with AI. We're taught to produce with AI. So the moment we step away from this idea of just producing with AI and instead engage with AI, we end up with very different and I think more powerful results. Um, Solo practice. This is something you could do at another time. We'll work on that perhaps you'll have access to these slides. But the idea with this practice and in a mini workshop would be to say, if you're given these options from AI, these one, two, three things on the left-hand side, what way would you try to address these options given with these four types of questions? And this gives us a way of building a sort of critical connection back to AI. And some of these things could be like one, two, and three, right? Where the students offer up three things that they decide in small groups that they think is the most important one. And then they choose to answer a question around the thing that they've received. I do a lot of team and group work that has students working in teams, but also working with AI in teams. And that we do this type of engagement. What you just practiced in that kind of activity would be this idea of, can AI, for example, offer up something that doesn't need to be validated? In other words, if you're a professional, but you just didn't have time to develop your marketing copy, and you get something back from AI and it sounds good, is that an appropriate use of AI if you're in a professional environment? Do you think that's true? Right? Like I would ask, do you think it's okay in a professional environment if you're just trying to get something done, like revise an email or develop some quick marketing copy or write a promo email out to students or something like that? Do you need that level of criticism and critique, or is is co-creation reserved for other things and other scenarios? I'd love to see if anyone has any thoughts about that in chat. What are your thoughts there? Unmute yourselves too if you'd like, but I think chat might be easier this group.
The
Do you
professor,
find?
if you can finish within 3 minutes.
Yeah. We're almost done. Yep. Anyone think about it? I'll tell you, I produce all the time in AI. Like I crank stuff out that I know I can look at and judge on my own because I have professional experience. But if I was a marketing intern and was being asked to produce stuff, I've got to have a level of criticism and critique that I've learned in college so that I can actually do a double check on this copy that's been created. I have 25 years of doing marketing, so I'm not in that kind of scenario. Here's where we are, and I've got a QR code up here that you guys can look at. So this idea of a co-creation philosophy uh, around AI um, is what you'll get with this QR code, and then you can see there's a bit.ly link right up there. And going out of this, you might think to yourself, what is a context I could use these things? What specific business or learning question do you have, or organizational question do you have? What AI could reasonably generate as a starting point? And if you give yourself a little bit of thinking in this context first, then you have more that you can work with. The handbook, I'd like to say, is a nice set of materials that are laid out there. I'll share my screen as I wrap things up here and just say the goal is not AI assisted completion. The goal is AI supervised judgment. And that's a different thing than we might have originally imagined to be true with AI. We instead might have thought that, well, aren't, we're just in a place where we need to learn how to make things really well and really easily. And I'm a believer that that's not true anymore.